Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Daniel from Thriving Solutions. Today we'll be presenting from our Orlando ServiceNow developer code review. So what is some of the coding best practices? Well, we want to have code that's easy to read. You want a code that is modular. You also want to have good naming variables, functions, renaming elements. Also, how it is self-executing functions and when to use them. And you also want to avoid some coding pitfalls. So how can we make your code human readable? The code that you write will be read by other developers and people in the field, and you want to have the code to be able to be easy to understand and future-proof to a certain extent. Okay, so it says here, when writing code, keep in mind others may be reading your code, and you want to make it easy and readable for the users. So it's important to use comments, separate the code to block with white space, and just keep it simple. So here's an example how to comment, right? You can use a double slash to make a single comment, and you can use the /* to make block of comments, right? So there's an example we can see here. So when describing, you can use comments to describe your code, right? So if you clearly describe your code, it's gonna be better for anybody else picking up this code in the future, right? You might develop some code for somebody, and they might not be somebody that's technical, right? But if you define your code well and you have good comments, it will be easy to follow and explain your code to somebody that might not be able to understand fully. Okay. You can also go back and update your comments, and if there's like an issue that arises, you can maybe post where the issue might have been fixed in a story or in an update set. So comments are really useful in that sense. So here we have an example. So this function is going to post a video, and then you can describe what kind of inputs and outputs should be expected. And this is really great when working in collaboration, because you might code a certain way and then other people might code different way, but if you use good comments, then they can at least provide the right amount of inputs and what they're expected to be their outputs. So modular components, right? So we want to be as modular. We don't want to repeat our code. We don't want to define code in the script itself, right? You can use what is called script includes. So a script include is a library where you can define functions and you can define different values to things. So ServiceNow has thousands of scripts includes. You can go through the system definition of script includes and look at some examples they have created. So basically, if you're familiar with coding, you can have background scripts that can be imported into a different part of that script in the back end, right? So it says here, break your code into modular components or specific functions. One way to accomplish this is using the script includes. Okay, so what are some of the benefits? They're easy to create. You can create any a script include in a few seconds. You can define small functionalities that could be called from your script without having to define that all the time, right? So it can be reused. So if you have similar logic to a script, then if you define a script include, you can perhaps send the fields and the values, right, for that field, and then in that script include, your function will gather, or it will take those inputs and it will do that logic that you had defined, and then it's going to give you the result, right? So you can use it for a lot of different cases. Okay, and then if you have a scope application and you want to define your main functions in one place, you can create a script include, and this will allow you to define all the most general functions that you can use in different areas in that app. You can also create specific script includes that are defined with the name, so you don't have to walk into that function, right? You can just call that script include, and it's only for that one purpose, right? So there's a lot to it. So definitely look in some documentation. So it keeps your code uniform in structure, right? So maybe you're working with a team, and you can work on creating these scripts includes that when different members are working in different areas in the code, right? They can go into this one place to define all their functions, and it could be used in different areas. They just import that script include, and then it keeps your code uniform. So maybe you have a lead developer and he's working with junior developers, and they can define their functions in a certain way, and then create the functionality or for different parts in your app, like for UI actions or business rules. So any background scripts can be used. All right, so how do we create a script include? You can basically go to script include module and create a new one. It gives you a baseline according to the name, right? It gives you that first function, but you can have either one function or you can have multiple functions, right? And then you define your logic in there. So some of the things that you want to consider when using script includes is there's something that you're going to be using constantly. Put in a script include. Maybe the fields and the elements change, but the logic is the same. So you can import, you can use the script include that way, that you're just sending it the fields and the elements that's talking about, and then it gives you the logic with the result, right? And it allows you to keep your project modular, simple, efficient, performance. It's going to be great. And you can define it for the global scope, or it can be for a scope application. Okay. And I believe that you can use a more modern JavaScript in scope applications, right? So let's talk about variables. Okay. So what do we call things? What are your naming conventions? There's a lot of different naming conventions. I prefer to use camel case for my variables. I have been using snake case in certain APIs and different places that deals with database or REST APIs. Pascal case, right? It's good for functions, right? Because you can have capital letters or collections that start with capital letters. Okay. What about renaming elements in your app, right? So many times I'm dealing with buttons or different fields. So as you're creating them, they get a generic name like text number 42, button 6, right? So you want to rename those page elements. So when you're coding, it's easier to find where you are. What are you talking about, right? So you put names to all the elements, to pages, to text, anything that you're touching with code. You want to have it not a generic name, but you have good naming conventions. Okay, and when you use a naming convention, stick to it. If you have a team, develop a documentation that talks about, okay, we're going to use this camel case for variables, we're going to use Pascal case for this other element, so that way if you're working with teams, you can have the same kind of coding. It's going to look the same, it's going to work efficiently, and you're not debating later on. Okay. Also be descriptive in the names, right? If the function has a certain functionality, don't be too vague about it. Be more specific in the name. Get current users that have that are active and are premium members. So find a name for that. Find shorter names, but a more descriptive name is best, even if it's a little bit longer. Okay, don't like to abbreviate too much that you can't even know what you're talking about, but be pretty specific that anybody can read it, and without having to put too many comments, right? So the way that you name things and that you lay out these functions are gonna, as you read the function and the code, it's gonna explain itself to a certain extent, right? You always want to add comments to be more specific, or to give the purpose of the function, right? And also when naming things, you can test values by logging statements, gs.info. There's tons of different tools in there that you can use to verify your results, and test with your expected results. If we put the right numbers in here, we're gonna get what we expect. And also put other things that people might type in, and that way you can define better these fields. So maybe you can do a regex to fix phone numbers, right? So if somebody is putting a 1, like a country code and the area code, or if they don't put the country code, right? So try these different scenarios where people can type in things differently, and test it and handle those errors. So don't wait till you have to debug things. You can start handling errors early on. Okay. Let's talk about self-executing functions, right? So the benefit of a self-executing function is that it's a self-executing, so it's declared and invoked in the same script. So here's an example that you have your function, and you can either include helper functions in there that will only be in that scope within the code, and it will execute itself, right? So this ensures that the script does not impact other areas in your product or your project, right? And it will help by not overriding global variables, and it will contain that script to itself, right? And perhaps you can define it where you're saving a variable to like memory, right? And if it doesn't exist, right, then it's gonna run that one time, and it's gonna hold it in memory. Like it could be in the memory of the user, it could be a cookie. So if it finds that variable and it's still valid, then it doesn't need to run that script, right? So you can put that check in that code, so that way you're not constantly calling things that could run up your APIs, or it could cause performance issues if you're constantly trying to get the same value over and over, right? You can save that to some place. But if you don't have it, then it runs that one time, and then you can get those values right away, right? So think about these functions, how you can make it more efficiently, how you can improve, reiterate, where can we improve our code. Right, so some common coding pitfalls. Many people like to just code, but there's sandboxes that you can use. There's developer instance. There's lower environments where you want to do all your testing and development. Many people just like coding the whole project at once, but maybe create your code in stages, where in the first stage you're just getting values, right? You're just testing out what are we doing, and you're completing small steps to that completion, right? So try to code as you go, right? That it's easier to find any bugs and to define functionality and reiterate. Hard-coded values, right? sysids, names of peoples, right? Names of things that are set, right, as they are. But imagine that things could be named one way, and maybe that the company is rebranding and they will rename things, right? So if you hard code a lot of things into your backend, then to change it could be difficult to make those changes later on, right? First of all, you need to find that code, and if it's in different places, and secondly, there's other ways that you can do it. Like you definitely don't want to hard code things into a workflow, because later on it could be changed. For example, this is the manager always, right? This always send it to this person, this one manager. Unless you want to go back to that code later on and have to change it, and maybe it's set like that in different places, right? You always want to use group memberships. For example, the group that handles escalations, right? Whoever is the manager there, one of these managers in that group. That way you can easily move people around without having to recode, right? And then also there's a get property function that you can use to get certain properties, instead of getting that sysid hard coded, right? Avoid dot walking into a sysid for reference. So when you do that sysid in that reference, right? When you pull the reference, it already has a sysid in the whole thing. But if you specifically say get sysid, then it could create another query, right? So you can use that get value to get that sysid from the first query. So that's one way to do that. Also, how to use the get display value effectively. The display value can be the display value of different things, right? So you want to understand what that looks like, right? So especially when you talk about dates, right? Dates and times, there's the server side, and then there's the client side. So the server side is always going to be the same. The client side depends on where that person is, right? Or where that code is being run as. So you always want to know what tables and fields you're talking about to better use that display value, right? Sometimes you can have a display value to be the name of something, or it could be the number of something, or it could be like an address, right? So that could be set in the dictionary, and if that changes, you want to know if you want that code to change or not, right? If it's something that's display, maybe it was display a sysid for the longest, and you wanted to display the name of the person. That get display value function is going to help you in certain cases, and in some cases you want to always have that one thing. If somebody goes and changes the display value on that table, you don't want it to affect something that's set, right? So that's where you as a developer are going to make those decisions. Okay, and then I just wanted to put here also that current dot update, right? Current dot update, we've seen that many times. Oh, I want to get that current value, you know, I want that value to be updated right away. So current dot update, when using business rules, you gotta be careful because it triggers other business rules. It could trigger updates in the database. It could trigger workflows. It could trigger a whole bunch of stuff, and it can create that recursion, right? Those long-running business rules. Why is my instance so slow? Why this thing not working? So if you can just avoid it altogether, be more specific. Just update that record that you're talking about. But if you need to use that current update, you know, there's a way to set that workflow false, meaning that it's not going to run any other additional workflows when you do that current update. And then you can set workflows true after that current update is done, right? So that's something that you can look into. So we got some links here. Here's the article that we're basing this talk on. We got this knowledge article from current update, and if you need to get your ServiceNow developer instance, visit developer.servicenow.com, and you can get your developer instance. Okay, so that is for today. This is my small talk here from Orlando ServiceNow developers code review. So you can follow us on YouTube, Orlando Snow Dev, also on Instagram with the same name. Visit us on our next meetup. It's coming up in June, so stay tuned for that. It's in the second week in June, so definitely subscribe, follow us on the meetup on Instagram. You can also email us at orlandosnowdev@gmail.com. And that will be all for today. My name is Daniel with Thriving Solutions LLC. And once again, thank you so much and have a blessed day. God bless you.